it feels like from the, from the list of names that you can see on this report that this is a bit of a watershed moment, and also that momentum is building. So you've all been involved in EPR for a number of years, and this is really a question for everyone. Do you have thoughts on how the landscape has changed? What you think is different now? Why things are sort of speeding up? Who should we go to first? Matt. Okay, Matt.
Thanks, Louise. I think the fact that we're here today talking about this paper with more than 100 businesses across the value chain, you've got 50 more, it's testament to how that debate has evolved over time. I think Guillermo mentioned, that the private sector has been engaged in these discussions for a good considerable amount of time. I think it's just actually now bringing all of this to the top of the agenda, more stakeholders coming to the table with a point of view. But I think to your question around kind of how's the landscape evolved, there's three things in my mind. I think one being in emerging markets in particular, how they're looking at this as potentially as a long-term kind of transition to, a more formalized waste management system. This is not an easy thing to do. We've just heard the discussion about timescales, the devil's in the detail. Every market requires a tailored solution. You cannot drag and drop European systems into other markets. It doesn't work like that. It requires, a lot of that groundwork to be done with the local stakeholders. And the paper acknowledges that there's a role for things like voluntary initiatives as an important step then to learn and inform. And we can see that in markets like Indonesia. So the fact that you're starting to see in places like Southeast Asia, these discussions again kind of rising up is a kind of development. I think the second one would be in terms of EPR systems being able to reward the right behaviors. I think Martin just alluded to it just in his comments as well, which is that you have incentives built in. So, there's conversations within Europe about modulated fees, which is effectively how do the fee structures incentivize the use of recyclable packaging? And so suddenly you're actually driving, the kind of upstream kind of behaviors as well as actually building the infrastructure. And I think finally, the kind of critical part, which we've kind of all covered, is the why is important, which is what this paper covers. But the most critical aspect then is actually how you do this. And, it's amazing, in terms of kind of the amount of shared experience and knowledge we've got across, different organizations. I'm part of a group called the Consumer Goods Forum, and, together there, we've kind of acknowledged the role that EPR can play and actually created some principles as kind of an industry to help inform that process and in discussions with government. Things like we need to have strong environmental outcomes, that it needs to be transparent, accountable. And it builds on the paper that you've got today from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, as it's very much that next stage of the discussion. And it's really exciting to see that you've got this kind of critical mass then coming together. It's no longer just a few organizations who do have that clear point of view.
Who would like to jump in next? Martin, perhaps, Guillermo?
With pleasure. I think something that has changed is the public outcry on plastics, because EPR is not new. Like we said before, I think Matt said it, like in the 90s, EPR schemes started booming and you saw a rollout. But at the same time, you also saw some EPR schemes not coming to maturity. And at least that's the feeling that many of us have, is that now there's really a second focus and a second wave of EPR schemes coming up. And that's the reason is that there's this very visible plastics issue. We've got this plastic leakage and we want to do something about it. And then the reality is that there are not so many instruments that can be used to really have these large scale impacts. And well, that's I would say where EPR has become once again put on the table. And maybe also that's why Guillermo said it took so many years. And now there's once again added this momentum to realize things. So I think that the plastics and the focus on plastics, it's really like it's a lever to put into place EPR also for other materials. And so I think that's an important element in the whole trend.
Guillermo, would you like to add anything to that as having?
Sure. Yeah, I was gonna. Sure. Thank you, Louise. And I was gonna say same thing. I think the plastics, the realization that we have this global plastics problem and that we need to address it in local ways. I think that's really gathered momentum for EPR now. This is, as has been said, this is a public good type of problem. I'm a company, I want to go and collect my packages after they've been used, and how do I do that on my own? It's not something I can do on my own, right? And EPR, as has also been said, generates this level playing field, and so you get everyone on board, and we do it all together, right? I think that it's especially important in countries like ours. Matt said something about this, emerging economies like Chile, right? What you have is that in some developed nations, it's municipalities that just went and established separate collection schemes and recycling, door-to-door recycling. That's not something that municipalities can do in our countries, you know? So what you have EPR doing here is really deploying this large-scale collection schemes. You know, in our EPR scheme, on top of the targets per ton, you know, we established specific collection targets. You know, this is a 12-year process that will start now, right? But after those 12 years, we will get to 80% of our households in Chile with door-to-door collection, where today it's only about 2%. You know, so it really allows you to tell and that's why I think it's also important, and it's relevant for corporations, because you tell your consumers, you know, this is recyclable, but then you will have a truck going in front of your house taking your recyclable packaging, you know, and that's not something that in our countries municipalities can do on their own. EPR is fundamental. We cannot do it without EPR.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a very quick comment, sort of from an El MacArthur Foundation perspective, because we focused very much the past couple of years has been very much about setting the ambition level, having many companies, 20% of the market signing up to concrete targets for the packaging and so on and so forth. We now have more than 1,000 businesses through our global commitment and Plastic Pact, you know, really aligned behind our vision for a circular economy for plastics. And now we're at a point where we are asking ourselves, well, how are we going to get there? And I think, you know, for all the organizations that have aligned behind this vision, it's very clear that EPR will have to be a part of the solution if we actually want to get there. So from an EMF perspective, it's also this, you know, now we're really getting into how we can deliver, which is a change in the landscape for sure.